What is going on, guys? Ted here with the A-Team. Today we're going to be going over diffusion. What is it? How do we use it on set? And what are a couple creative methods of using it on a project? So, Julia, what is diffusion?
Diffusion is a material. It's a wide range of materials from cloth to paper and things that we use to soften the quality of light.
So today we're going to go over 3 different types of diffusion. What are those 3 types of diffusion?
We have muslin, we have full grid, and we have magic cloth.
Awesome. So let's go to our first set. We're going to break down what muslin is. Alrighty, so we're on set with our first setup. We're talking about muslin. Now, Julia, what is muslin?
Muslin is one of the thicker types of diffusion. It's so thick that not only can you use it to diffuse light, but you can bounce light off of it. It comes in 2 varieties. Usually it's unbleached and bleached. So bleached transmits white light, unbleached is a little warmer, and it's barely noticeable. So if you wanted to warm up something, you could use unbleached. We decided to use bleached because we have this cooler scene, it's cloudy outside, and we used it to diffuse our key light.
Right on.
Yeah.
So
cool.
What is the scene? What's the location? How are you using it?
So we had a large dining room and we had 2 people sitting across from each other at a table. We shot toward the windows, which I love to do. That attributes to like smart side lighting where light is coming from opposite camera side. We decided to black out the windows that we didn't see and that weren't actually giving us too much ambient light, so we killed those. And then the ones that we do see, we decided to go with like a soft, pretty blown out look. If you were to actually blow out the windows, sometimes that can look kind of gross. So we decided to put diffusion on the outside, and then inside we added shears to hide the fact that we're putting like white squares on the windows.
Right on,
Yeah.
adding a little texture to that diffused light.
Yeah. So we put a 300D up to edge the 2 of them through muslin. We put it up between the actors to kind of edge both of them, which then justified it being the key when you go in for coverage. And then we threw a 1200 watt HMI Fresnel through the windows. HMIs have that punch that you need through windows, so we threw that through the windows just to add a little more source.
All right, so that's not all the lighting you used. You actually brought in one more light, right?
Yeah, so when we did cross coverage, we wanted to sweeten up the key light a little bit, so we brought in a 120D through the same exact bleached muslin to kind of just sweeten up the close-ups and make the key a little wrappier. If you just went with that 300 above, it might be too sighty, it might be too high. So the 300D, we could back up as a hair light because in the wide, you can see the edge. And then we used the 120 on the faces.
This is an important note to remember here. When you're lighting that wide, you go stylized. When you go in closer, you're gonna actually make sure that you can see the subject's face.
Yeah, I think DPs can get caught up in the beginning with just trying to match their wides, but that restricts you a little bit. And if you watch any big movie, you will see that we sweeten up close-ups when we go in for those. The wides are like more stylized, they're edgier, they're contrastier, and then when you go in, you really like sweeten up the faces and add detail and stuff like that.
So then finally you added one more thing. What was that last touch?
Yeah, so instead of adding a fill light, which I don't like to do in general, I added haze. So haze broke up the light that we did have and it did fill the room a little bit.
Right on, so let's check out the shots. Alrighty guys, so now we are on set for our second setup. Now Julia, what is the second type of cloth that we're talking about?
So the second type of diffusion we have is magic cloth, which is one of the thickest types of diffusion. And one of the situations you're gonna find yourself in a lot of times as a DP is you wanna shoot against windows. And if you wanna see outside, but you also wanna see inside, you're gonna naturally need to bring up exposure inside because it's naturally much hotter outside. But one of the most elegant ways I've found to bring up exposure inside without it feeling too like I'm lighting the inside of this room is by making a book light. So a book light is basically, we're bouncing and then we're diffusing. So we've got a light sandwich between some kind of bounce material and then some kind of diffusion material.
So 2 methods of softening in one.
Yes, exactly. So we put 2 300Ds into an ultra bounce floppy. So we're bouncing it off of that. And then the light that's bouncing is then diffused through magic cloth to really, really soften.
Right on. So that's not all you add to this scene too, you added one more light, right?
Yeah, the last thing I added was a 1200 watt HMI par through the window because we had lost our sun, so we needed some kind of highlight edge in the frame, so we just added that.
Right on.
Detail. Yeah.
So let's check out the shots. All right, so now we're on our third lighting setup. What is the third type of diffusion that we're gonna go over?
The third type of diffusion we have is full grid. So it's another cloth heavy diffusion. But the cool part is that it has a really good spread across skin. It's a good starting point. It's not as heavy as something like muslin or magic cloth. It keeps the highlights specular and kind of pinpointy so they don't get lost. They're very specific while still being soft on the face.
Right on. All right, so now for our actual scene, let's walk through the lighting. What was the first thing that we did?
So we had two 1200 watt HMI pars outside. We put full grid on the windows as diffusion to cut those. Then we put the sheer trick on the front of the curtains in the scene.
Why did we need that much light?
Basically, we don't have any sun anymore, so we had to do night for day, and HMIs have the punch that you need through the window, so we used HMIs to kind of give direction to daylight.
Cool, so let's be clear here. If you have actual daylight, you can still recreate this look. You don't need those lights. Again, we're only doing this because it is nighttime. We need to make up for it. So tell me about the final light that you added to the scene.
So the final light was just a fill light. It was a 120D and it was diffused twice. So the first set of diffusion was the grid that is in the mini dome. And then I aimed it in the ceiling, so it's bouncing off the ceiling in addition to being diffused already.
Right on, so by softening it twice, you really make it sourceless.
Yeah.
Make it seem like it's just raising the ambience levels.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an extension of the window essentially.
Right on, so that's a great trick, guys. Anywhere that you have a ceiling and softening tools, you can make that kind of ambient light. Right on, so we're gonna go see some footage right now. And finally, we added one more thing. So we went in for close-ups. How did you change the lighting there?
Yeah, so I wanted it to get a little more specific and control the direction a little more. So I took a 120D on the ground and I shone it through a 4x frame of full grid to get really specific.
So guys, that's a really important tip. I know that we touched on it before, but your wide and your close-up lighting do not need to be the same. That's not what they mean when they say consistent lighting. They just mean that it needs to look consistent and motivated.
Yeah, it needs to feel the same, but it doesn't mean you have to keep the lights in the same place and then just go in for the close-ups.
Yeah, so in this case, Julia added an entirely new light, softened it through, but as long as it was coming through the same angle and it looked about the same intensity level, everything matches and cuts together. Alrighty guys, so there you have it. There's your episode on diffusion with Julia Swain. Julia Swain, walk us through it one more time.
So we went through 3 heavier types of diffusion that I really like to use. The first one was muslin. Muslin is great because it's beautiful in skin tones. What's also great about it is because it's so heavy, you can also bounce off of it, which lets light reflect on the skin and is also very beautiful. Then we had magic cloth, which is a very heavy type of diffusion, which is great when you're shooting against other sources like windows and things because it makes your light kind of sourceless and kind of hides the fact that you're using a light. The third one was full grid, which is another beautiful thing on skin. But what's great about it is it's more specular, so you have more defined eye lights while you still have a gradual loss of light on the face, which is beautiful.